In the depths of a stormy night over 200 years ago, a young woman sat by candlelight and dreamed of monsters. She dreamed of lightning that could breathe life into dead flesh. She dreamed of a creator who would become the slave of his own creation. She dreamed of loneliness so deep it could drive a soul to madness. Mary Shelley did not know that the story forming in her mind would become one of the most powerful tales ever told. A story that would haunt generations and never let them go. She did not know that her creature, stitched together from corpses and animated by forbidden science, would become more famous than kings and queens, more discussed than philosophers and saints. She could not have imagined that centuries later, people would still whisper the name Frankenstein in the darkness, still feel their hearts race at the thought of the monster, wandering through frozen wastelands, still wonder whether the true villain was the creature or the man who made him. This is not just a story about science gone wrong. This is a story about what it means to be human, what it means to be abandoned, what it means to create something you cannot control. This is a story that asks the oldest questions and gives no easy answers. So settle into your blankets, close your eyes, and let the Gothic shadows wrap around you like a familiar cloak. Let the wind howl outside your window as we journey back to the beginning, to the moment when everything changed, to the night when Victor Frankenstein first opened his eyes and saw what he had done. Ambience Chapter 1, The Shelley Circle and a Dark Summer. Okay. Mary Wollstonecraft Godwin was only 18 years old when she created Frankenstein, but her short life had already been marked by tragedy and brilliance. She was the daughter of two of the most radical thinkers of their time, Mary Wollstonecraft and William Godwin, people who believed in revolution and freedom and the power of the human mind. But Mary never knew her mother, who died just days after giving birth to her, and this loss would echo through everything she would write. Mary grew up surrounded by books and ideas, living in a house where poets and philosophers came to argue late into the night, where thoughts were valued more than money, where imagination was encouraged to run wild. She was not sent to school like boys were, but she educated herself, reading everything she could find, absorbing knowledge like a sponge soaks up water. She read her mother's books and felt connected to a woman she would never meet. She read Gothic novels full of ghosts and mysteries. She read about science and exploration and the limits of human ambition, and when she was still very young, she fell in love with a poet named Percy. Mary Shelley, a married man who promised her freedom and adventure and a life, lived according to their own rules rather than society's expectations, gleamed. They ran away together to Europe, scandalizing everyone who knew them, and Mary found herself living a life that was both thrilling and difficult. She had 2 children who both died in infancy, losses that broke something inside her that never fully healed. She was often poor, often moving from place to place, often surrounded by Percy's friends, who were brilliant and self-destructive in equal measure. And in the summer of 1816, when she was still just 18 years old, she found herself at a villa on the shores of Lake Geneva. In Switzerland, trapped indoors by constant rain and storms. With her were Percy, her stepsister Claire Claremont, the famous poet Lord Byron and Byron's personal physician John Polidori. They were young and restless and bored, and the weather kept them inside day after day, night after night. The villa was grand but gloomy, and the lightning over the lake was spectacular and frightening. They read ghost stories aloud to each other in German, tales of the supernatural translated and retold, and the atmosphere grew darker and more intense as the days passed. One night, Byron suggested that each of them should write a ghost story of their own, something to match the eerie mood that had settled over their little group. The men immediately began planning their tales, full of confidence in their abilities as established writers. But Mary felt pressured. She wanted to write something meaningful, something that would be more than just a simple, scary story. She wanted to create something that would make people think and feel and question. Night after night she struggled, lying awake in the darkness, listening to the thunder roll across the water, wondering what her story should be. And then one night, after listening to Percy and Byron discuss the new experiments in galvanism, the idea that electricity could animate dead tissue, after hearing them debate whether the principle of life could ever be discovered and manufactured, Mary had a lens. She saw a pale student of unhallowed arts kneeling beside the thing he had put together. She saw the creature stir with uneasy motion, saw it open its yellow eyes, saw the horror on the creator's face as he realized what he had done. She saw the whole story in a flash of lightning-bright inspiration, and when she opened her eyes, she knew she had found her tale. She began writing the next day, and the story poured out of her like water from a broken dam, carrying with it all her grief over her lost children, all her anxiety about creation and responsibility, all her questions about what makes something truly alive and truly human. Mainz, Chapter 2, Victor Frankenstein's Golden Childhood. The story Mary created begins in Geneva, that same city where she had spent the dark summer crafting the tale. Victor Frankenstein is born into privilege and love, the eldest son of a wealthy and respected family. His father, Alphonse, is a man of integrity and public service, someone who has earned his position through hard work and moral character, rather than simply inheriting it. His mother's beautiful and kind, a woman who was rescued from poverty by Alphonse after her own father died in disgrace and death. Victor's early childhood is almost too perfect, filled with the kind of happiness that makes you nervous because you know it cannot last. He has everything a child could want: loving parents, a comfortable home, beautiful surroundings in the mountains and lakes of Switzerland, and the freedom to explore his curiosity about the world. Victor describes his childhood as a time when he was deeply loved and deeply happy, when his parents seemed to exist only to make him and his eventual siblings content and fulfilled. There is no abuse in Victor's background, no poverty, no obvious trauma that would explain what he will later become. This is important because it means that what happens is not the result of a damaged childhood, but of something else, something more complicated to define: bond. When Victor is about 5 years old, his mother takes him to visit a poor family. She has been helping, and there they find a little girl named Elizabeth. Elizabeth is described as being almost unnaturally beautiful, with golden hair and a gentle spirit that immediately captures everyone's hearts. She is the daughter of a Milanese nobleman and a German woman, but she has been orphaned and left in the care of a family too poor to properly raise her. Caroline Frankenstein decides immediately to adopt Elizabeth and bring her into their home. And from that moment on, Elizabeth becomes Victor's closest companion. She is presented to him almost like a gift, a pretty addition to his life, and though they grow up as siblings, everyone understands that they are expected to eventually marry. Elizabeth represents everything good and pure in Victor's world, everything he will later feel he has lost or destroyed. She is patient and gentle, where he is intense and driven. She finds beauty in nature as something to appreciate and enjoy, while Victor wants to understand it, control it, tear it apart to see how it works. Their relationship is loving but also slightly unequal, because Victor sees her as something to protect and eventually possess rather than as a true equal who might challenge or change him. Amongst Victor's childhood becomes even happier with the arrival of his best friend Henry Clerval, of a merchant, a boy with a romantic soul who loves adventure stories and tales of chivalry and heroes. He wants to be a knight in shining armor, wants to do great deeds and help people, and live a life of noble purpose. Where Victor is drawn to science and the secrets of nature, Henry is drawn to literature and human stories and the imagination. They are opposites in many ways, but deeply bonded by genuine affection and years of shared experiences. Henry represents the road not taken for Victor, the possibility of a life lived in connection with other people, rather than isolated in a laboratory. He represents friendship and loyalty and all the human warmth that Victor will eventually abandon in pursuit of his obsession. Victor's family continues to grow with the birth of his younger brothers, Ernest and William, and for years they spend the summers in their house in the countryside, winters in Geneva, and Victor is encouraged to study whatever interests him. His parents are indulgent and supportive, believing that children should be guided gently rather than forced into rigid patterns. This freedom is both a blessing and a curse for Victor, because he has no external discipline to balance his internal intensity. Blanc, Chapter 3. The seeds of obsession. Victor's fascination with science does not begin in a university classroom or under the guidance of a wise mentor. Instead, it begins with an accident, a chance discovery that will shape the entire course of his life. When he is about 13 years old, the family is staying at their house near Bellerive when a violent thunderstorm strikes. Victor and his family are safe inside, but they watch through the windows as the storm rages with terrifying power. Lightning splits the sky again and again, and Victor is mesmerized by the raw force of it, the pure energy that seems to tear reality apart. Then, in one brilliant flash, a bolt of lightning strikes an old oak tree that stands near the house, a tree that has been there for years and years, solid and permanent. The lightning does not just damage the tree, it utterly destroys it, reducing it in seconds to splinters and smoke. Victor watches this happen and is both horrified and fascinated. The sheer power of the lightning, the way it can unmake in an instant what took decades to grow, captures by chance. A natural philosopher is visiting nearby And this man explains to Victor the principles of electricity and galvanism, the new and exciting science that people are just beginning to understand. He demonstrates some experiments and shows how electricity can cause muscles to contract even after death, how it seems to mimic the life force itself. For most people, this would be an interesting lesson and nothing more, but for Victor, it is a revelation that changes everything. He becomes convinced that electricity is the key to understanding life, that somewhere in those sparks and currents lies a secret of animation, of existence itself. From that moment on, he is obsessed, stops reading the books he had been interested in before. Old alchemists like Cornelius Agrippa and Paracelsus and Albertus Magnus, who promised the impossible, the elixir of life, the philosopher's stone, the ability to create life from nothing. He realizes these old texts are nonsense, superstition dressed up as knowledge, but instead of turning away from the dream they represented, he simply decides to pursue the same goals using modern science instead of ancient magic. Is the crucial turn in Victor's life, the moment when his natural curiosity becomes something darker and more dangerous. He does not want to understand nature for the sake of knowledge or to help humanity. He wants to master it, to become its equal, to do what no one has ever done before. Blamed, his father notices Victor reading Agrippa and dismisses the book as sad trash. But he does not explain why these old alchemists were wrong or guide Victor toward better sources. This small failure of parenting has huge consequences because Victor is left to navigate the boundary between legitimate science and dangerous obsession without guidance or warnings. As he grows older, his fixation only deepens. He reads everything he can find about natural philosophy, chemistry, anatomy, and the principles of life. He teaches himself in isolation, without teachers to question his assumptions or classmates to provide perspective. His family notices that he is studious and serious, but they do not understand the intensity of what is growing inside him. They think he is simply a dedicated student, a young man with intellectual interests. They do not see that he is beginning to separate himself from normal human concerns, beginning to value his work above his relationships, beginning to believe that the ends will justify any means. Elizabeth and Henry try to draw him into their activities, try to get him to enjoy nature and literature and simple pleasures, but increasingly Victor finds these things trivial compared to the great work he dreams of accomplishing. He is not yet a monster, but he is becoming someone who will create one. Moons Chapter 4, the university years, and the crucial discovery. When Victor is 17 years old, he is supposed to go to the university at Ingolstadt to begin his formal education. But just before he is scheduled to leave, his mother Caroline falls ill with scarlet fever, which she catches while nursing Elizabeth through the same disease. Caroline's illness is sudden and severe, and despite all the doctor's efforts, she dies within days. Her death devastates the family and fills Victor with guilt and rage. He is angry at the unfairness of it, angry that someone so good could be taken so suddenly, angry that all the medical knowledge in the world could not save her. She dies telling Elizabeth and Victor that her greatest wish is for them to marry. Someday, making Elizabeth promise to take her place and caring for the family. This deathbed scene creates both a blessing and a burden, binding Victor even more strongly to Elizabeth, while also filling him with a desperate need to conquer death itself. If death can take someone like his mother for no reason, then death is the enemy, the ultimate. Victor's grief is intense, but also strangely intellectual. He mourns his mother, but he also sees her death as evidence that he must pursue his studies, even more fanatically, must unlock the secrets that would make such deaths preventable in the future. Lond, he delays his departure for the university by several weeks, but eventually leaves for Ingolstadt, which is in Germany, far from his home and family. The journey takes him away from everything familiar, away from the people who might have kept him grounded, and deposits him in a university town where he knows no one and has only his studies to focus on. His first days at the university are difficult because he is shy and grieving and not naturally social. He attends lectures and meets his professors, but he feels disconnected from everything. Then he encounters two professors who will change his life in opposite ways. The first is Professor Krempe, who teaches natural philosophy and is a blunt, unpleasant man. When Victor tells him about his background reading Agrippa and the alchemists, Krempe mocks him openly, telling him he has wasted his time on nonsense and must start over from the beginning. Krempe is right in his assessment but wrong in his delivery. Because his contempt only makes Victor angry and defensive, Victor decides he does not like Krempe and begins to skip his lectures, which is a mistake because Krempe, despite his rudeness, is a good teacher who might have provided some ethical grounding for Victor's study. Blinked. The second professor is Waldman, who teaches chemistry and is everything Krempe is not: kind, encouraging, eloquent, and inspiring. The professor gives a speech that will echo in Victor's mind for the rest of his life. Waldman talks about how modern scientists have achieved what the ancient alchemists only dreamed of. He says that contemporary chemists have discovered incredible powers and can command the forces of nature itself, that they can mimic earthquakes and mock the invisible world with its own shadows. His words are poetic and intoxicating, and they fill Victor with renewed ambition and purpose. Waldman does not mean to encourage anything dangerous. He is simply passionate about his field and wants to inspire his students. But for Victor, who is already teetering on the edge of obsession, these words are like pouring gasoline on a fire. He hears them as permission, as confirmation that his wildest dreams are not impossible, but simply difficult. He decides that he will dedicate himself completely to science, that he will outdo all the scientists who came before him, that he will discover the secret of life itself. He stops writing to his family as often. He stops sleeping regular hours. He abandons all hobbies and friendships and thinks only of his work. Lane Foot. Victor is a model student in the sense that he works incredibly hard and masters everything his professors can teach him, but he is not a normal student because he has no balance in his life, no joy in anything except his studies, no connection to other people. He quickly surpasses what his teachers can offer and begins his own private research, working in a small laboratory space, conducting experiments that he tells no one about. He becomes fascinated by the structure of the human body, by anatomy and decay, and the border between life and death. He spends days and nights in charnel houses and graveyards, observing how bodies decompose, taking notes, collecting specimens that he will not describe in detail, but that are clearly body parts from the dead. He tells himself this is necessary for science, that squeamishness has no place in the pursuit of knowledge. He becomes pale and thin and feverish, driven by an energy that is not healthy, but that he mistakes for inspiration. And then, one night after weeks of sleepless work, he makes the discovery he has been seeking: how to create life. Mary Shelley does not tell us exactly what Victor discovers, which is brilliant because it means the story is not really about the scientific method, but about what happens when ambition has no limits. Victor describes it as a sudden light breaking upon him, a revelation so enormous that he can barely believe it himself. He has found the secret that has eluded humanity since the beginning of time, and he is alone with this knowledge, with no one to tell him to stop, no one to ask him whether he should do what he now knows he can do. Dem Chapter 5. The Long Months of Creation. Once Victor knows how to create life, he faces a choice that would define him forever. He could publish his discovery, share it with the scientific community, allow others to discuss the ethical implications and practical applications. He could conduct small perhaps trying to animate something simple. Before attempting something as complex as a human being, he could write to his father or his professors and ask for guidance. He could take time to think about the consequences of what he is planning. But he does none of these things. Instead, consumed by what he calls a feverish ardor, he decides immediately to create a human being, and not just any human being, but one of gigantic size, about 8 feet tall, because he believes working on a larger scale will be easier than trying to manage tiny, intricate details. This decision reveals everything wrong with Victor's thinking. He is not considering what life would be like for an 8-foot-tall creature in a world designed for normal-sized people. He is not thinking about what responsibilities he will have once this creature is alive. He is only thinking about his own convenience and his desire to achieve his goal as quickly as possible. Mind, he sets up a secret workshop in an apartment. He rents a filthy room at the top of a building where no one will bother him or see what he is doing. He gathers his materials from slaughterhouses and charnel houses, and dissecting rooms places of death and decay. He collects bones and organs and skin and muscles, selecting the best specimens he can find. He works through summer and fall and winter, barely eating, barely sleeping, ignoring letters from home, turning into a ghost of himself. His eyes sink into his skull. His skin becomes pale and stretched. He is more corpse than living man, which is grimly appropriate given what he is building. He says that his workshop is filled with the instruments of life, but feels like a tomb. Says that he works surrounded by death and corruption. But he continues anyway because he has convinced himself that the end result will justify all of this, that once he succeeds, the glory and achievement will make the horror worth it. He is lying to himself, but he does not know it yet. Land. During these months, Victor occasionally has moments of doubt. When he steps outside and sees the beauty of nature, when he realizes how isolated and unhealthy he has become. But these moments pass quickly, and he always returns to his work with renewed determination. He is afraid that if he stops even for a day, he will lose his nerve or his inspiration will fade. He has become addicted to the work, to the feeling of being on the verge of something monumental. He imagines how grateful his creation will be, how a whole new species might bless him as their creator, how he will have defeated death and disease. He daydreams about reanimating the dead, about bringing back people who have died too young, about essentially becoming a god who can grant eternal life. These fantasies reveal that Victor's project is not really about helping humanity, but about feeding his own ego, proving his own genius, achieving a kind of immortality through his work. He does not think about what his creation will think or feel or want. He does not imagine that it might have opinions or desires or needs. He thinks of it as his creature, his accomplishment, his property. This fundamental failure of empathy, this inability to imagine the inner life of the being he is creating, is Victor's original sin, the mistake from which all the tragedy will flow. As winter deepens and the work nears completion, Victor becomes increasingly agitated and strange. He avoids people entirely, works through the nights by candlelight, and loses all sense of normal time and rhythm. His hands shake constantly. He talks to himself. He can no longer remember what it felt like to be happy, or relaxed, or connected to other human beings. There is only the work and the creature taking shape on his table, only the goal that is now so close he can almost touch it. He has prepared all the equipment he needs to infuse the spark of life. Though again, Mary Shelley does not tell us exactly how this works. On a dreary night in November, with rain pattering dismally against the windows and the candle burning low, completes his work. The creature lies assembled before him, and with instruments he will not describe. He begins the process of animation. He watches with anxiety that almost amounts to agony. Watches as the creature's chest begins to rise and fall. Watches as life begins to flow through the body he has constructed. And then, in what should be his moment of greatest triumph, the creature opens its dull yellow eyes and looks at him, and Victor's entire world collapses in an instant. Lamed Chapter 6, The Moment of Horror. Meaning, the creature that opens its eyes and looks at Victor is not what he expected, though what exactly Victor expected is unclear even to himself. He has tried to make it beautiful, selecting fine features and proportions that should be pleasing, but in chapter 11, the creature's story begins. Now, the creature approaches Victor without hesitation, and Victor's first instinct is fear and revulsion. He sees the yellow eyes, the disproportionate features, the enormous size, and he feels the same disgust he felt on the night of the creation. His first words to the creature are harsh and angry. He calls it a devil and a vile insect, tells it to leave him alone, threatens to destroy it. Victor is trying to reassert his dominance, to treat the creature as a thing rather than a person, to avoid acknowledging. But the creature does not respond with violence or anger. Instead, it speaks calmly and eloquently, with a voice that is surprisingly gentle and articulate. The creature tells Victor that it is miserable and alone. that it has suffered beyond anything Victor can imagine, and that Victor, as its creator, owes it at least a hearing. It asks Victor to listen to its story before passing judgment, to understand what its existence has been like before deciding how to respond. This is a reasonable request, and the creature's ability to make it reveals something important. This is monster. This is a thinking, feeling being capable of reason and communication, capable of asking for justice and compassion. Victor is startled by the creature's eloquence and by the genuine suffering he hears in its voice. Part of him wants to refuse, to walk away and maintain his denial, but another part of him, perhaps the part that still has some shred of conscience, recognizes that he does owe the creature this much. He created it and abandoned it without explanation. And if the creature has grievances, he should at least hear what they are. So Victor agrees to listen. The creature leads him to a small hut on the glacier, a shelter used by travelers, where they can sit in relative comfort while the creature tells its story. And then, over the course of hours, the creature explains what happened after Victor ran away on the night of its creation, explains the journey that transformed it from a confused newborn into the being it has become. The story the creature tells is one of the most heartbreaking and powerful parts of the entire novel, because it makes it impossible to see the creature as simply a monster. It becomes clear that the creature is as much a victim as it is a villain, that it was not born evil, but made cruel by the cruelty of others. The creature begins by describing its first moments of consciousness, the confusion and disorientation of suddenly existing, without any context or knowledge. It woke in Victor's apartment, with senses that were overwhelming and confusing. It could see but did not understand what it was seeing. It could hear, but all sounds were meaningless noise. It could feel, but did not know hot from cold, pain from pleasure. Everything was new and terrifying and incomprehensible. The creature's first experiences were purely sensory. The light hurt its eyes, so it closed them. It felt cold and it was hungry and thirsty, but did not know what those feelings meant or how to address them. Eventually, instinct drove it to seek shelter and relief. It left Victor's apartment, wandering into the streets of Ingolstadt in the darkness, driven by basic needs it did not yet understand. It found its way out of the city and into the surrounding countryside, moving by instinct, seeking warmth and safety. These first days were a blur of sensation and confusion, the creature learning the most basic things through trial and error: that fire is warm but can burn, that water quenches thirst, that certain plants can be eaten while others make it sick. It was like an infant in a giant body, helpless and ignorant. But unlike an infant, it had no one to care for it, or teach it, or protect it. The creature eventually found shelter in a forest, where it began to learn the basics of survival. It discovered how to distinguish between edible and inedible plants. It learned that moonlight and starlight were gentler than sunlight, which hurt its sensitive eyes. It learned the cycles of day and night, the sounds of different animals, the feel of rain and wind. Slowly, over weeks, its senses began to organize themselves into something coherent, and it started to perceive the world as a place, rather than just a chaos of sensations. and as its perceptions became clearer, it began to notice something else. Birds singing to each other, which sounded pleasant, the moon and stars, which looked beautiful, the forest itself, which had a certain harmony and peace to it. The creature was beginning to develop aesthetic appreciation, beginning to have emotional responses beyond just fear and discomfort. It was becoming a conscious being with an inner life, and that inner life was lonely and confused, full of questions. It had no way to answer. It did not know what it was or where it came from. It did not know that there were others like it, or rather, that there were not others like it. Instead, these questions haunted it as it huddled in the forest, trying to understand itself and the world. Mengst, Chapter 12. First encounters with humanity, The creature's education advanced dramatically when it discovered humans for the first time. It had left the forest and was wandering in search of food when it came upon a small hut where an old man lived alone. The door was open, and the creature, not knowing any better, entered the hut, seeking warmth and shelter. The old man was there, and when he saw the creature, he screamed and ran away, fleeing the hut in absolute terror. The creature was confused by this reaction. It did not understand why the sight of it would cause such fear. It looked around the hut with interest, finding food and eating it because it was hungry, finding the fire pleasant and warming itself, but it was disturbed by the man's reaction and eventually left. This was the creature's first encounter with human judgment, based on appearance, but it did not yet understand what had happened or what it meant. It continued traveling and eventually came to a village. Drawn by curiosity about the buildings and the sounds of people, the creature entered the village in daylight, perhaps hoping to find welcome or at least indifference. Instead, it was met with immediate horror and violence. People saw it and screamed. Children ran away crying. Adults grabbed weapons and began attacking it, throwing stones and swinging sticks, driving it away with shouts and blows. The creature, which had not threatened anyone and had only been curious, was terrified and hurt by this treatment. It ran away from the village as fast as it could, wounded and confused, understanding now that its appearance caused fear and hatred, but not understanding why or what it could do about it. This experience taught the creature an important and terrible lesson. Humans would not accept it. It could not simply walk up to people and expect to be treated kindly, or even neutrally. Its appearance alone was enough to trigger violent rejection. This realization was devastating because the creature was beginning to understand that it was a social being, that it needed connection and communication with others, but it was being denied these basic needs based on something it had no control over, lengths. The creature fled from the village and eventually found another shelter, and this shelter would become its home and education for many months. It discovered a small lean-to structure attached to the back of a cottage. The lean-to was low and rough, made for storing firewood, but it was just large enough for the creature to hide in. There was a small crack in the wall between the lean-to and the cottage, and through this crack, the creature could see and hear the people who lived in the cottage. There were 3 of them, an old blind man named De Lacy, his son Felix, and his daughter Agatha. The creature watched them constantly, fascinated by everything they did. It watched them prepare food and eat together. It watched them read aloud to each other in the evenings. It watched them work during the day, Felix gathering firewood and tending a small garden, Agatha cooking and cleaning, and the old man playing a musical instrument that made beautiful sounds. The creature was drawn to them, not just out of curiosity, but out of a deep longing. They seemed happy together, or at least content. They cared for each other. They communicated in ways the creature could not yet understand, but desperately wanted to learn. And through watching the de Lacys, the creature began its real education. It learned language by listening to them speak and observing what words corresponded to what objects and actions. It learned the names of things: fire, bread, milk, snow. It learned verbs: come, go, eat, sleep. Gradually, over months, it learned enough language to understand their conversations, and through those conversations, it learned about the broader world. It learned that these people were poor and struggling, that Felix and Agatha worked hard to care for their elderly father, that they had once been wealthy but had lost everything through some misfortune. It learned about emotions by watching how they expressed sadness and joy and love. It learned about music and beauty and the way humans find meaning in things beyond mere survival. And crucially, the creature learned that it could feel these same emotions. When the de Lacys were sad, the creature felt sad. When they were happy, it felt a kind of vicarious joy. When Felix played music and the old man smiled, the creature felt something it would later recognize as the appreciation of beauty. The creature was developing a soul, a moral sense, an emotional life, as rich and complex as any human's, all while hidden in a woodshed, watching through a crack in the wall. Bant Chapter 13, Education Through Observation. As the creature continued to observe the de Lacys, it began to develop a deep affection for them. It wanted to help them, wanted to make their lives easier if it could. It noticed that Felix worked very hard to gather firewood, and that this task seemed to exhaust him. So the creature began doing it in secret. At night, while the family slept, the creature would go out and gather wood, leaving it stacked neatly outside their door. In the morning, Felix and Agatha would find the wood and be mystified about where it came from, but they were grateful for it because it made their lives much easier. The creature felt proud and happy to be able to help them, to contribute something positive to people it cared about. This small act of kindness reveals something essential about the creature's nature. It was not created evil or malicious. Its first instinct when it found people it cared about was to help them, to make their lives better. If Victor had shown it even a fraction of this care and attention, if he had guided and taught it instead of abandoning it, the entire tragedy might have been avoided. Blind, the creature's education advanced even further when a young woman named Safi arrived at the cottage. Safi was the daughter of a Turkish merchant and was Felix's beloved. She spoke a different language and needed to learn the language the de Lacys spoke, so Felix began teaching her using books and lessons. The creature, watching and listening through the crack, became a student alongside Safi. As Felix taught Safi to read and write and speak, the creature learned the same lessons. This parallel education is one of the most poignant elements of the story, because it shows what the creature could have become with proper teaching and care. It was intelligent and capable and eager to learn. It mastered language at an impressive speed, not just functional communication but eloquent expression, eventually becoming more articulate than many educated humans. Through the books, Felix used to teach Safi. The creature learned about human history, about different cultures and nations, about wars and heroes and great achievements. It learned about human values, honor, courage, love, loyalty, and it began to compare these ideals to its own situation and to find the comparison desperately painful. The creature also found some books that had apparently been abandoned in the pocket of a coat it had taken from Victor's apartment, and these books had a profound effect on its developing consciousness. One was Milton's Paradise Lost, the epic poem about the fall of Satan and the creation of humanity. The creature read this and identified deeply with several characters. It saw itself in Adam, created without choice and abandoned by its creator, but it also saw itself in Satan, rejected and cast out, filled with rage and pain. The creature began to understand its own situation through these literary parallels, to see that its feelings of abandonment and its desire for connection were not unique but were fundamental human experiences that had been written about for centuries. Another book was Plutarch's Lives, which taught the creature about virtue and nobility and the heights of human achievement. This inspired the creature and made it want to be good and do great things. The third book was Goethe's The Sorrows of Young Werther, a sentimental novel about love and longing and ultimately suicide. This book taught the creature about romantic love and the depths of human emotion, but it also reinforced the creature's sense of isolation because it could ever being loved the way the characters in the book loved each other. Mined through all this education, the creature was also becoming aware of itself, and this self-awareness brought new pain. It discovered a pool of water one day and looked into it. Seeing its reflection for the first time, it was horrified by what it saw, understanding suddenly why humans reacted to it with such terror and disgust. Realized that it was hideous, that its appearance was fundamentally different from the beautiful faces of the de Lacys or the descriptions of people in books. This realization was crushing because it meant that its isolation was not temporary or fixable. It was not just that it had not yet found the right people who would accept it. Its very appearance made it unacceptable to humans, and there was nothing it could do to change that. The creature also found some papers in the coat it had taken, and these papers were Victor's journal notes from the time when Victor was creating it. Reading these notes, the creature learned the truth about its origins. It learned that it had been assembled from corpses, that it had been created deliberately by a man named Victor Frankenstein, and that Victor had been disgusted by it and had run away immediately after bringing it to life. This knowledge was the final piece of the puzzle, the explanation for why it existed and why it was alone, and this knowledge filled the creature with a new emotion that it had not fully experienced before: rage. Blaine chapter 14, The Attempt at Connection. No. Despite learning about its origins and understanding how it looked to others, the creature still hoped that it might find acceptance. It had been watching the de Lacys for so long, had learned to care for them so deeply, that it could not give up the hope that they might care for it in return. The creature formed a plan. It had noticed that the old man, de Lacy, was blind, which meant he could not see its hideous appearance. The creature decided it would approach the old man when he was alone, introduce itself, explain its situation, and ask for help and guidance. It believed that if it could win the old man's sympathy and friendship first, perhaps he could then convince Felix and Agatha to accept the creature, despite its appearance. This was a reason, and it showed that the creature was capable of strategic thinking and of understanding human psychology, but it also revealed how desperate the creature had become for connection, how willing it was to risk rejection yet again for even the smallest chance of finding acceptance and belonging, meant the creature waited for weeks for the right opportunity. And finally, one day, Felix and Agatha left the cottage to go on a long walk, leaving the old man alone. The creature gathered all its courage and approached the cottage. It knocked on the door, and the old man invited it in, assuming it was a traveler in need of assistance. The creature entered and sat down, and the two of them began to talk. The old man was kind and welcoming, and the conversation went well. The creature spoke eloquently about its loneliness and suffering, though it did not yet reveal what it was or what it looked like. It explained that it had no friends, that it was rejected by everyone because of its appearance, and that it desperately needed guidance and help. The old man was sympathetic and told the creature that he would gladly help if he could, that no one should be friendless and alone. For a few precious minutes, the creature experienced what it had been longing for: acceptance, kindness, the feeling of being treated as a person worthy of consideration. It was the happiest moment of the creature's entire existence. But then Felix and Agatha returned unexpectedly. They entered the cottage and saw the creature sitting with their father, and their reaction was immediate and violent. Agatha fainted. Felix grabbed a stick and began beating the creature, driving it away from the old man, screaming for it to leave. The creature could have fought back. It was far stronger than Felix and could have easily overpowered him, but the creature did not want to hurt these people. It had come to love, so it simply fled, running away from the cottage in despair. It hid in its lean-to shelter and listened as the family talked in frightened, shocked voices, as Felix comforted Agatha and assured their father that the monster was gone. The creature's heart was broken. Its one attempt at connection had ended in rejection and violence. Just like every other encounter with humans, it stayed hidden in the lean-to through the night, hoping that perhaps the situation could be salvaged, that the old man might explain to the others, and they might be willing to talk to it again. But in the morning, the entire family packed up their belongings and left. They abandoned the cottage because they were too frightened to stay. After seeing the creature, they left without a word, without giving the creature any chance to explain, or apologize, or try again. Land, Chapter 15, The Birth of Rage. Okay? The departure of the de Lacys was the turning point in the creature's transformation from a hopeful, benevolent being into something darker and more dangerous. It had tried so hard to be good, had helped them secretly for months, had educated itself in order to be worthy of their friendship, had approached them with humility and honesty, and it had been rejected, not because of anything it had done, but simply because of how it looked. Overwhelming. The creature spent days in a kind of numb shock, unable to process what had happened or to decide what to do next. All its hopes had been centered on the de Lacys, and now they were gone. and the creature was alone again with no plan and no reason to hope that things would ever be different. During this time, something fundamental changed inside the creature. The gentle feelings that had filled it when it watched the de Lacys, the love and compassion and desire to help, began to curdle into bitterness and anger. If the world would not accept it no matter how good it tried to be, then why should it try to be good? If humans would only ever see it as a monster, then perhaps it should become the monster they believed it to be. Lengths. The creature's rage needed a target, and initially, that target was not Victor, but the de Lacys themselves, or rather the cottage, where it had been so happy and where its hopes had been destroyed. In a moment of pure rage and grief, the creature set fire to the cottage, burning it to the ground. It watched the flames consume the place where it had learned about humanity and language and love, and it felt a savage satisfaction in the destruction. This act of arson was the creature's first truly malicious action, the first time it deliberately chose to hurt rather than help. But even as it burned the cottage, the creature was not satisfied. The destruction of an empty building could not address the deeper pain it felt, the fundamental loneliness and rejection that were eating at it from the inside. The creature needed to find the person who was ultimately responsible for its suffering, the person who had created it and then abandoned it without care or guidance. Ein Victor Frankenstein. Langed. The creature had learned Victor's name and origin from the journal it had found, so it knew that Victor came from Geneva in Switzerland. Not entirely sure what it would do when it got there, but driven by a need to confront its creator, to demand an explanation or an apology or something that might make its existence bearable. The journey took months, and the creature traveled mostly at night to avoid being seen by humans. It survived on whatever food it could find, slept in forests and abandoned structures, and continued its education by occasionally stealing books and reading them. Its long journey. The creature had time to think about its situation and philosophy of sorts about what had happened to it and what it deserved. It decided that Victor owed it something. If not love, then at least acknowledgement. If not acceptance, then at least explanation. And the creature began to form an idea about what it really wanted. What might make its miserable existence bearable. It did not want to be part of human society anymore, because that was clearly impossible. But it thought perhaps it did not need to be completely alone. If Victor could create one being, he could create another. The creature began to imagine having a companion, a female creature as hideous as itself, someone who would not reject it because she would be just like it. Blamed. Chapter 16, The Murder of William. Kai. As the creature approached Geneva, it was still not planning violence. It was still hoping that it might be able to reason with Victor, to convince him to take some responsibility and to help. But then, purely by chance, the creature encountered a beautiful child playing alone in the woods near Plain Palais. The child was William Frankenstein, though the creature did not know that at first. The creature's first instinct when it saw the boy was actually hopeful. Children, the creature thought, were supposed to be innocent and unprejudiced. Perhaps a child would not yet have learned to judge by appearances. Perhaps this child someone the creature could talk to, and who might not run away in fear. So the creature approached the boy gently and tried to talk to him, but William reacted with the same fear and disgust that adults had shown. He screamed and tried to get away, and the creature grabbed him to keep him from running, tried to cover his mouth to keep him quiet, tried to explain that it meant no harm, but William struggled and shouted, and in his fear, he said something that changed everything. He said that his father was Victor Frankenstein, a respected man, and that his father would punish the creature for touching him. The name Frankenstein struck the creature like a lightning bolt. This child was Victor's brother. This child was a part of the family of the man who had created the creature and then abandoned it. All the rage and pain that the creature had been carrying for months suddenly focused on this one small person. If Victor had made the creature suffer, then Victor should suffer too. If the creature had to live in loneliness and isolation, then Victor should know what loss felt like. The creature's hands were still on William's throat from trying to keep him quiet. And now, those hands tightened. The creature strangled the boy, watching as his struggles weakened and stopped, watching as the life went out of him. And it was motivated not by mindless violence, but by a very human desire for revenge, for making the person who hurt you feel the same pain you have felt. After William was dead, the creature felt a mix of emotions: satisfaction that it had hurt Victor, guilt over killing an innocent child, and a kind of wild desperation because there was no going back now, no possibility of reconciliation or redemption. The creature had become a murderer, had proven that it was indeed a monster. Langed. The creature took the miniature portrait of Caroline Frankenstein that William had been wearing, and this is when the creature demonstrated its capacity for calculated cruelty. It did not simply leave the scene. Instead, it wandered until it found a barn where a young woman was sleeping. The woman was Justine Moritz, and the creature recognized her as a servant in the Frankenstein household because it had been watching the family. The creature looked at her sleeping peacefully and felt a moment of bitter resentment. Here was someone who was accepted by society, who had a place and a purpose, who could sleep without fear of being driven away or attacked. The creature decided that this woman should suffer too. It carefully placed the portrait in her pocket, framing her for the murder, ensuring that not only would William's death cause Victor pain, but an innocent person would be blamed and punished for it. This act showed that the creature had learned the cruelest lessons of humanity: how to lie, how to manipulate, how to make others suffer for your own satisfaction. The creature had been shaped by rejection and cruelty into something that could inflict rejection and cruelty on others. Chapter 17, The Creature's Demand. Now, as the creature finishes telling Victor the story on the glacier, the full horror of what has happened becomes clear. The creature was not born a monster, but was made into one by Victor's abandonment and by humanity's rejection. It tried to be good, tried to connect, tried to find some way to exist peacefully, and every attempt was met with violence and fear. The tragedy is that both Victor and the creature are victims in a sense, but they are also both responsible. Victor created life without thinking about the consequences, without preparing to care for what he created, and then compounded his crime by abandoning the creature completely. The creature, in response to its suffering, chose violence and revenge, chose to murder an innocent child and frame an innocent woman, becoming the monster that people assumed it was. And now they are face to face again. Creator and creation, with two deaths between them and no clear path forward. The creature tells Victor that it is not asking for forgiveness, and it is not apologizing for what it has done. Instead, it is making a demand. The creature tells Victor that it has thought carefully about what it needs to be able to live without causing further harm. It cannot live among humans because humans will never accept it. But it also cannot bear to live in complete isolation because the loneliness is too painful, as Victor should understand, because Victor himself is a social being who needs others. The creature's solution is this. It wants Victor to create a female companion for it, a creature as deformed and horrible as itself, someone who will not reject it, because she will be exactly like it. The creature promises that if Victor does this, if Victor creates a mate for it, then it and its companion will leave Europe forever and go to the wilds of South America, where they will live far from any human settlement. They will eat only plants and never harm anyone. They will be completely isolated from humanity, and Victor will never see or hear from the creature again. But if Victor refuses, if he denies the creature even the small chance at happiness, then the creature will make Victor's life a living hell. It will pursue him everywhere, destroy everything he loves, make him suffer in ways he cannot imagine. The creature tells Victor that it has nothing to lose because its life is already miserable, which means it can dedicate itself entirely to revenge without fear of consequences. Victor's first response is to refuse absolutely. He is horrified by the idea of creating another creature, of repeating the mistake that has already caused so much suffering. He tells the creature that he would never create a female version that could potentially breed and create a race of monsters that might threaten all of humanity. He is outraged that the creature would dare to demand anything from him after murdering William and causing Justine's death. But the creature is persistent and eloquent in its argument. It asks Victor to see the situation from its perspective, to understand that it is asking only for what any being deserves: companionship, the chance to not be alone, the possibility of a life that contains something other than misery. The creature points out that its crimes were caused by its isolation and suffering, and that if that suffering were relieved, it would have no reason to commit further crimes. It argues that Victor has a responsibility as its creator to provide it with at least the basic conditions for a tolerable existence, and that refusing to do so, while also refusing to destroy the creature completely, is a form of torture. The creature's arguments are compelling and rational, and despite himself, Victor begins to see some validity in them. Chapter 18. Victor's terrible agreement. Victor struggles with the decision for hours as he and the creature debate on the glacier. Part of him remains convinced that creating another creature would be an unconscionable crime, a repetition of his original sin that could lead to even worse consequences. He imagines a pair of monsters breeding and creating offspring, imagines a race of beings that are stronger than humans and potentially hostile to them, imagines being responsible for the destruction of humanity. But another part of him recognizes the logic and even the justice of the creature's demand. He did create this being, and by doing so, he took on certain responsibilities, whether he wanted them or not. The creature is suffering through no fault of its own, suffering because of how Victor made it and because of Victor's abandonment. And the creature is not asking to be allowed to hurt people or to be integrated into society. It is asking only to be allowed to exist somewhere far away, with one companion, asking for the minimum conditions necessary for a bearable life. Victor Oscat. The creature has already killed twice and has proven it is capable of calculated revenge. If Victor refuses, more people will die, quite possibly people Victor loves. Elizabeth, his father, Henry Clerval, all of them are potential targets. After hours of debate, Victor finally agrees to the creature's demand, but he makes the creature promise certain conditions. The creature must swear that it and its mate will leave Europe immediately once she is created, that they will never return to areas inhabited by humans, that they will live in isolation and never harm anyone. The creature eagerly agrees to all of these conditions, so desperate for the possibility of companionship that it would promise almost anything. It tells Victor that all its violence and rage will disappear once it is no longer alone, that all it wants is the chance to live peacefully with another being who understands it. Victor, despite his deep misgivings, believes this promise, or at least wants to believe it, because the alternative is to accept that he will have to live in fear forever. They part on the glacier with this terrible agreement in place. The creature will wait and watch from a distance while Victor returns to civilization and begins the work of creating a female creature. Victor is filled with dread about what he has agreed to do, but he is also grimly determined to do it, because he sees no other choice. He tells himself that he is choosing the lesser of two evils, that creating one more monster is better than allowing the creature to kill his entire family. And Victor returns to Geneva and finds his family somewhat recovered from the immediate shock of William's and Justine's deaths, though the shadow of grief still hangs over them. Elizabeth is worried about Victor because he seems troubled and distant, and she asks him repeatedly if something is wrong. So he makes vague excuses about his health and his need to travel for his studies. His father, hoping that a change of scenery and a definite plan for the future might help Victor recover his spirits, suggests that perhaps Victor and Elizabeth should finally marry. This is what Victor's mother and his father thinks that the joy of a wedding might help heal the family. Elizabeth agrees, though with less enthusiasm than she would have shown before all the tragedies. She tells Victor that she will marry him if it will make him happy. She also gives him an out, saying that if he has feelings for someone else, or if he does not truly want to marry her, she will understand and not hold him to the childhood promises. This is a moment of genuine love and selflessness from Elizabeth, and Victor is moved by it, but he misinterprets her words, thinking she is hinting that she might want to marry him, when in fact she is simply trying to give him freedom, if he needs it. And Victor tells Elizabeth that he does want to marry her, but he asks for a delay. He says he needs to take a trip first, a journey that will take several months, and that when he returns, they can proceed with the wedding. And Victor's father accepts this plan, though. He does not understand why Victor needs to travel again. The truth is that Victor needs to go somewhere isolated where he can work on creating the female creature without being observed or interrupted. He decides to travel to England and Scotland, taking Henry Clerval with him as a companion. Victor tells Henry that he wants to visit English scholars and laboratories before settling down to married life, and Henry is delighted by the prospect of traveling together. They set off on what should be an exciting adventure, two young men exploring foreign countries. But for Vic, the journey is a nightmare because he is carrying the secret of what he has agreed to do, and he knows that somewhere behind them, invisible but always present, the creature is following, waiting for Victor to bound. Chapter 19. The Journey Through England and Scotland. Victor and Henry travel through England, visiting universities and meeting scholars, and for a while, Victor is able to almost forget about his dark purpose. Henry is such a cheerful and enthusiastic companion that his presence makes it difficult to dwell on gloomy thoughts. They see beautiful landscapes and interesting cities. They attend lectures and discussions. They meet intelligent people who welcome them warmly. For Henry, this is a wonderful time, a chance to expand his horizons and experience the world. For Victor, it is a form of torture because he knows he is deceiving his best friend, knows that he is using this journey as a cover for something terrible, knows that eventually he will have to separate from Henry to do work that would horrify him if he knew about it. Victor is also constantly aware of the creature's presence, even though he does not see it. He knows it is out there somewhere, watching, waiting, making sure Victor does not try to escape his promise. This knowledge makes Victor paranoid and anxious, seeing potential threats in every shadow, unable to fully relax or enjoy anything. Blendius. As they travel north, through England and into Scotland, Victor begins to think about where he can set up a secret laboratory to do his work. He needs somewhere isolated, somewhere he will not be observed, somewhere Henry will not accidentally discover what he is doing. Victor convinces Henry that he needs some time alone to work on a scientific project, and that Henry should stay with friends in Edinburgh while Victor goes to a remote area to concentrate on his work. Henry is disappointed but understanding, and they part with plans to reunite in a few weeks. Victor travels to one of the most isolated places in Scotland, a small island in the Orkney archipelago, barely inhabited, windswept and barren. There is a small cottage on the island, and Victor rents it, telling the few locals that he is a scholar who needs solitude for his studies. The cottage is perfect for his purposes, isolated, gloomy, with enough space to set up a laboratory. Victor orders equipment and materials, and soon he is ready to begin the horrific work of creating a second creature. The work is even worse than the first time, because now Victor knows exactly what he is doing and has no illusions about the glory or nobility of it. He works with a sense of dread and disgust, assembling body parts, preparing the apparatus for animation, hating every moment of it. The island's landscape mirrors his mental state. It is bleak and cold, constantly battered by wind and rain, a place that feels like the edge of the world where nothing good can grow. Victor works slowly, procrastinating, finding excuses to delay, because part of him still hopes he might find a way out of this agreement. but he knows the creature is out there somewhere, waiting and watching, and he knows that if he fails to complete his task, the creature will take revenge on everyone Victor loves. So he forces himself to continue, day after day, assembling the female creature piece by piece, preparing to give life to something he knows the world would be better off without. And as he works, doubts begin to grow in his mind. Doubts that will eventually consume him completely. Bond Chapter 20. The Terrible Decision. As Victor gets closer to completing the female creature, he begins to think more carefully about the possible consequences of what he is doing. And these thoughts terrify him. What if the female creature, once created, turns out to be even more evil than the male? What if she refuses to live in isolation and wants to be part of human society? What if the two creatures, instead of leaving for South America as promised, decide to stay in Europe and terrorize the population? What if they have children, creating a race of super strong beings that could potentially threaten humanity's survival? The creature had promised to leave and live peacefully, but what guarantee does Victor have that the promise will be kept? The creature has already proven it is willing to murder, to lie, to manipulate. Why should Victor trust that it will honor its word? And even if the male creature is sincere in its promises, what about the female? Victor has not even created her yet, so he has no sense of what her personality might be. She might be gentle and agreeable, or she might be violent and cruel. She might fall in love with her male companion, or she might hate him. Victor realizes he is making huge assumptions about how this female creature will think and feel, and those assumptions might be completely wrong. Victor also begins to think about the female creature's perspective and rights. The creature had argued that it deserved a companion because loneliness was unbearable. But what about the female? She would be brought into existence solely to be a companion for the male creature. What if she did not want that role? What if she wanted to make her own choices, live her own life, not be bound to a male she had no voice in choosing? Victor would be creating her essentially as property, as a thing designed to fulfill someone else's needs, and he recognizes that this is morally wrong. Of course, Victor does not consider that this is exactly what he did to the male creature, bringing it into existence without consent for Victor's own purposes, but at least he recognizes the problem in this instance. The more Victor thinks about all these issues, the more convinced he becomes that creating the female creature would be a mistake, that he would be unleashing unpredictable consequences that could be even worse than what has already happened. But if he does not create her, the original creature will certainly kill everyone Victor loves. Victor is trapped between two terrible choices, and he cannot see any way forward that does not lead to tragedy. One night, Victor is working in his laboratory on the island, with the female creature almost complete on his table, when he happens to look up toward the window, and there, in the moonlight, he sees the creature. It has been following him all along, has tracked him to this remote island, and now it is watching through the window with an expression that Victor reads as a hideous grin of anticipation. The creature is waiting for Victor to finish, waiting for the moment when the female will be brought to life, and the sight of that anticipation, that eagerness, suddenly fills Victor with revulsion and a wild recklessness. In that moment, all his doubts crystallize into a decision. He cannot do this. He cannot create another being like the creature. He cannot take responsibility for what these two creatures might do together. And so, in full view of the creature watching through the window, Victor begins to tear apart the female body he has been assembling. He rips apart the limbs and organs, destroys all his work, makes it impossible to complete the creation. He is breaking his promise, dooming himself to the creature's revenge, but in that moment, he does not care. He feels that he is making the right choice, that he is preventing a greater evil, even if it means accepting personal consequences. Sant chapter 21, the creature's revenge begins. The creature watches Victor destroy the female, and the expression on its face transforms from anticipation to horror to rage. It howls with a sound so terrible that Victor will remember it for the rest of his life. The creature disappears from the window, and for a moment, Victor is alone with the destroyed remains of what might have been. Italy, what he has done. He has betrayed the creature's trust, broken his promise, and ensured that the creature's loneliness will continue forever. He has also ensured that the creature will now dedicate itself completely to revenge, with nothing to hold it back and nothing to lose. Victor knows he has signed his own death warrant, and possibly the death warrants of everyone he loves, but he still believes he made the right choice. That night, Victor disposes of the remains, throwing them into the sea, destroying all evidence. He cleans his laboratory and prepares to leave the island, knowing he is no longer safe anywhere but unable to stay in this place that has become a site of such terrible decisions. Pombe. The next day, before Victor can leave the island, the creature appears to him one last time. It enters the cottage, and Victor is filled with fear, certain that the creature has come to kill him immediately. But the creature does not. Instead, it delivers a message, a promise of revenge, that is more terrifying than any immediate violence could be. The creature tells Victor that it will be with him on his wedding night. The words are simple but chilling, and Victor interprets them as a direct death threat, believes the creature is telling him that it will kill him on the night he marries Elizabeth, that it will wait until Victor is happiest and most hopeful, and then destroy him. Victor is actually relieved by this interpretation, because it means the creature is focused on him, not on his family. He decides that he will marry Elizabeth as planned, and on the wedding night, he will be ready for the creature's attack. He will arm himself and defend against it, and either he will kill the creature or the creature will kill him, but at least the conflict will be resolved one way or another. It does not occur to Victor, not even for a moment, that the creature might be threatening Elizabeth rather than him. This failure of imagination, this assumption that everything must be about him, will prove to be a fatal mistake. Manger, Victor leaves the island and travels to meet Henry as they had planned. But during the journey, a storm blows his small boat off course, and he ends up landing in Ireland instead of Scotland. When he comes ashore, he is immediately met with hostility from the local people. They take him to the magistrate, and Victor learns to his horror that a murder has been committed nearby. A man has been strangled, and Victor is suspected because he arrived at approximately the time of the murder. Victor is taken to see the body to determine if he recognizes the victim, and when he sees the corpse, he is struck with shock so profound that he collapses. The murdered man is Henry Clerval, his best friend, strangled with the same finger marks on his throat that William had, killed by the creature as part of its campaign of revenge. The creature has not killed Victor himself, but is systematically destroying everyone Victor loves, making him suffer by taking away all his friends and family. Victor falls into a fever again, this time even more severe than the first one after creating the creature. He is delirious for months, raving about monsters and murder, and he is kept in an Irish prison because he is still suspected of Henry's murder. Joy. Evidence emerges that proves Victor could not have committed the murder, because he was on the island when it happened, and also because witnesses saw a huge strange figure near the scene of the crime. Victor is released and his father comes to Ireland to take him home, but the damage is done. Henry, his faithful friend who never did anything wrong, is dead because of Victor's actions, dead because the creature is punishing Victor by destroying everyone around him. And Chapter 22, The Wedding and the Final Horror. Victor returns to Geneva, broken in body and spirit, but he is still determined to marry Elizabeth. Perhaps he thinks that marrying her will somehow protect her, or perhaps he is simply following through on plans made long ago, unable to think of an alternative. Elizabeth is worried about Victor's state of mind and his obvious depression and fear, but she agrees to the marriage because she loves him and because the family needs something positive after so much tragedy. Victor's father is also pushing for the marriage, hoping it will help Victor recover and give the family a reason to be happy again. The wedding is planned quickly, and despite Victor's dread, it goes forward. It sounds like the ravings of a madman, and the magistrate gently suggests that Victor needs rest and medical care rather than assistance in hunting monsters. Some efforts are made to investigate Victor's claims, but nothing comes of it. The authorities cannot find any evidence of the creature's existence, and they certainly cannot track something that moves so quickly and hides so well. Eventually, they give up, and Victor realizes he is on his own. If the creature is to be stopped, if justice is to be achieved, Victor will have to do it himself, and so he will dedicate the rest of his life to pursuing the creature, to hunting it across the world if necessary, and to destroying it. This is no longer about protecting anyone else, because there is no one left to protect. This is about revenge and justice, and ending what should never have been created in the first place. Victor sells all his property and uses the money to fund his pursuit. He arms himself and begins tracking the creature, following the trail of clues and sightings that the creature almost seems to leave deliberately. It becomes clear that the creature knows Victor is following it and is leading him on a chase, perhaps enjoying the reversal of their roles, perhaps wanting Victor to suffer through a long pursuit before the final confrontation. Victor follows the creature across Europe, through Russia, and eventually into the Arctic, the frozen wasteland at the top of the world. The creature seems to be heading toward the most isolated, inhospitable place imaginable, and Victor pursues it with grim determination. The pursuit takes months and drains Victor of his remaining strength and health. He becomes a ghost of himself, driven only by hatred and the need for revenge, barely eating or sleeping, focused entirely on his quest. The Arctic is brutal, and the conditions are nearly impossible, but Victor forces himself forward, driven by willpower alone. He sometimes finds messages the creature has left, words carved into trees or rocks, taunting him, encouraging him to follow, promising that they will meet soon. The creature seems to be trying to kill Victor through exhaustion and exposure, rather than direct violence, leading him deeper into the frozen north, where survival becomes increasingly difficult. Band, Chapter 24, The Ice and the Rescue. Victor finally catches sight of the creature when they are both far out on the Arctic ice. He sees it in the distance with a dog sled moving quickly across the frozen sea. Victor has his own sled and dogs, and he tries to follow, but the ice is unstable and dangerous. Cracks form without warning. Sections break apart and drift. Victor finds himself stranded on an ice floe, unable to reach land or continue his pursuit. He has been out on the ice for days. His dogs have died. His supplies are almost gone, and he is resigned to his death when he sees a ship in the distance. The ship is an Arctic exploration vessel, commanded by Captain Robert Walton, and Walton's crew spots Victor on the ice floe and rescues him. They bring him aboard barely alive, nearly frozen to death, barely coherent. Walton is an explorer who has dreamed his whole life of reaching the North Pole and making discoveries that will bring him fame and glory. He is ambitious and romantic, in some ways similar to how Victor was in his youth, and he immediately feels a connection to Victor, even though Victor is clearly near death. Victor is nursed back to something resembling health on the ship, though it is clear he will not survive much longer. He has been pushing himself too hard for too long, and his body is failing, but his mind is still sharp, and he feels a need to tell his story, to warn Walton about the dangers of ambition and the importance of knowing when to stop pursuing a goal. Walton is fascinated by Victor and writes down everything he says in letters to his sister back in England, and these letters become the frame narrative for the entire story. Victor tells Walton everything: his childhood, his education, his creation of the creature, the murders, the pursuit. Walton is horrified and sympathetic and deeply moved by the tragedy of what has happened. He tries to convince Victor to give up his quest for revenge, to rest and recover and return to civilization. But Victor refuses. Even dying, even with nothing left to live for except revenge, Victor insists that the creature must be destroyed, that it is a threat to humanity, that his death will not matter if the creature survives. Blamed. While Victor is recovering on the ship, the crew encounters something that confirms his story. They see a huge figure on the ice in the distance, something that could not possibly be a normal man, and they realize that Victor was telling the truth, that the creature is real. This sighting terrifies the crew because they understand now that they are sharing the Arctic with something monstrous and dangerous. The ship has become trapped in ice and cannot move, and the crew is growing increasingly frightened and restless. They are worried about dying in the Arctic, about being trapped forever in the ice, like so many previous expeditions that were never heard from again. They want Walton to turn back, to give up on reaching the North Pole, to escape while they still can before they become completely stuck. Walton is torn, because turning back means giving up on his life's ambition, giving up on the fame and discovery he has dreamed about For years, Victor, from his deathbed, gives Walton a speech encouraging him to continue, to not give up on his dreams, to push forward no matter the cost. But Walton, unlike Victor, is capable of listening to voices other than his own ambition. He sees what obsession has done to Victor, sees how it has destroyed him and everyone around him, and he makes a different choice. He agrees to turn back if the ice frees the ship, to abandon his quest for glory in favor of keeping his crew safe and praised. Chapter 25, the final confrontation. Victor dies on the ship, never getting his final revenge, never actually confronting the creature one last time, dying with his task incomplete. Walton is with him when he dies, and Victor's last words are a confused mix of regret and continued insistence that the creature must be destroyed. Walton is deeply affected by Victor's death and by the tragic story he has heard. He is alone in the cabin with Victor's body, reflecting on everything he has learned, when he hears a sound and looks up to see the creature itself standing at the window of the ship's cabin. The creature has come to see Victor's body, drawn by the death of its creator. Walton is terrified, but also mesmerized. This is his first time actually seeing the creature up close, and it is exactly as Victor described: huge, powerful, hideous, but also somehow pitiable. The creature climbs through the window into the cabin and approaches Victor's body, and Walton expects it to express triumph or satisfaction at its enemy's death, but instead, the creature looks down at Victor's corpse and speaks, and what it says is unexpected and heartbreaking. It does not gloat or celebrate. Instead, it mourns. It talks about how it and Victor were bound together, creator and creation, enemy and enemy, the two of them locked in a relationship that was toxic and destructive, but also somehow essential to both of their identities. The creature says that it did not want to become a murderer, that the violence it committed gave it no pleasure, but only more misery. It explains that every time it killed someone Victor loved, the creature felt its own humanity dying a little more, felt itself becoming more monstrous in reality, rather than just in appearance. It says that it wanted to be virtuous and good, that it tried to be, but that rejection and suffering twisted it into something evil. The creature takes responsibility for the murders, acknowledges that it chose violence when other choices might have been possible, but it also points out that Victor bears responsibility too, that none of this would have happened if Victor had shown even minimal care and compassion for what he created. The creature's speech is eloquent and self-aware, full of genuine anguish, and it makes Walton question his initial assumption that the creature is simply a monster that needs to be destroyed, maimed. The creature tells Walton that it is going to end its own life, that with Victor dead, it has no purpose left, and no desire to continue existing. It says it will travel to the furthest northern point. It can reach and build a funeral pyre there, throwing itself into the fire and burning until nothing remains. It says it will finally find the peace in death that it was never able to find in life. The creature does not ask for forgiveness or sympathy. It simply states what it plans to do, and then, before Walton can respond or try to stop it, it leaves the ship, leaping out onto the ice and disappearing into the Arctic darkness. Walton rushes to try to see where it went, but the creature is already gone, vanished into the frozen night, moving toward whatever end it has chosen for itself. Walton is left alone with his thoughts and with Victor's body, trying to process everything he has seen and heard. He writes one final letter to his sister, describing the creature's appearance and words, and admitting that he does not know what to think or feel about any of it. Was the creature a monster or a victim? Was Victor a tragic hero or a cautionary tale about unchecked ambition? Walton does not have answers, and neither does the reader. These questions remain open, which is part of what makes the story so powerful and lasting. Come chapter 26. The creation of a legend. Mary Shelley finished writing Frankenstein in the spring of 1817, less than a year after she had the initial vision on that stormy night in Switzerland. She was still only 19 years old. The novel was published anonymously at first in 1818, with a preface written by Percy Shelley that led many readers to assume he was the author. Some readers were horrified by the gruesome subject matter and the sympathetic portrayal of the creature. Some critics dismissed it as a sensational Gothic tale with no literary merit. But other readers recognized that there was something deeper and more important in the book, that it was asking serious questions about scientific responsibility, about what makes something human, about the relationship between creators and their creations. The book gained popularity slowly, and when it was revealed that the author was a teenage girl, it increased even more. Mary Shelley revised and expanded the novel for a second edition, published in 1831, adding more details and making Victor's character slightly more sympathetic. This later version is the one most people read today. The story of Frankenstein took on a life of its own beyond the novel. It was adapted for the stage numerous times in the 19th century, and these theatrical versions often simplified the story and made the creature less articulate and more monstrous than in the book. The name Frankenstein became associated with the creature rather than the creator in popular usage, fusion that persists to this day. When someone says Frankenstein, most people think of the monster rather than the scientist, which is ironic because it highlights one of the story's themes, the way creators try to distance themselves from their creations, even though they are fundamentally responsible for them. The story resonated with readers across decades because it touched on fears and questions that are timeless. What are the limits of scientific inquiry? What responsibilities do we have toward what we create? What happens when ambition is not balanced by ethics? What makes something human, and what makes something a monster? Can we ever really escape the consequences of our actions? It learns language and literature. It experiences complex emotions like love, grief, loneliness, and rage. It has moral reasoning and can articulate sophisticated arguments about justice and responsibility. It appreciates beauty in nature and art, friendship and purpose, in all the ways that matter philosophically. The creature is a person, and the novel forces us to recognize this even as Victor refuses to. This raises uncomfortable questions about what we consider human and what we exclude. The creature is treated as a monster, because of its appearance, but the real monstrosity in the story is often Victor's behavior, his abandonment, his cowardice, his willingness to let innocent people die to protect himself. The novel suggests that monstrosity is not about physical appearance, but about how we treat others, but our capacity for cruelty, land. The creature's eloquence is crucial to this theme. When it speaks beautifully and persuasively, using sophisticated vocabulary and logical arguments. It quotes Milton and discusses philosophy. This eloquence makes it impossible to dismiss the creature as simply an animal or a thing. It is clearly an intelligent, self-aware being, capable of reason and deserving of moral consideration. But this eloquence also makes the creature more tragic because we understand that it is fully conscious of its suffering and isolation, that it is not simply living on instinct but is intellectually and emotionally aware of everything it has lost or never had. The creature's self-awareness is both what makes it sympathetic and what makes its situation unbearable. An animal does not understand what it means to be lonely, but the creature does, and it can articulate that loneliness in ways that make our hearts ache for it. This is why readers often feel that the creature, despite being a murderer, is also a victim, perhaps even more so than the people it kills. Land. The structure of the novel reinforces this moral ambiguity. The story is told through multiple nested narratives. Walton writes letters to his sister, within which Victor tells his story to Walton, within which the creature tells its story to Victor. This structure means we get multiple perspectives and are invited to judge the events from different viewpoints. When we first hear about the creature from Victor, it seems like a simple monster, a terrible mistake. But when the creature tells its own story in the middle of the novel, we hear a very different perspective, one that makes Victor look like the villain and the creature like the victim. Then, when we return to Victor's perspective for the final section, we are forced to hold both viewpoints in our minds. Simultaneously, understanding that both Victor and the creature are right in some ways and wrong in others, that the tragedy is not simple but complex and rooted in mistakes and choices made by both parties. This refusal to provide easy answers is part of what makes Frankenstein such a rich and enduring work of literature. And Chapter 29, The Gothic Atmosphere. You know, Frankenstein is often categorized as Gothic literature, and it uses many conventions of that genre to powerful effect. Gothic literature is characterized by dark settings, mysterious atmospheres, elements of horror and the supernatural. Ordentligt. Like Frankenstein. The settings are consistently gloomy and dramatic. Victor's dark laboratory, lit only by a guttering candle, the isolated hut on the Scottish island battered by storms, the frozen Arctic wasteland where the final pursuit takes place. Nature itself in the novel is often sublime in the sense that 18th and 19th century writers used the term beautiful but also terrifying, overwhelming human scale and making human concerns seem small. The mountains and glaciers of Chamonix, the storms over Lake Geneva, the endless ice of the Arctic, all create an atmosphere of awe and dread. These settings are not just background, but reflect and amplify the emotional states of the characters. When Victor is most disturbed and guilty, the weather turns stormy. When the confrontation between Victor and the creature reaches its climax, they meet in the most extreme landscape imaginable. Mummed, the Gothic atmosphere also emphasizes isolation and decay, two themes central to the story. Victor isolates himself repeatedly. When creating the creature, when recovering from his fever, when working on the female creature, when pursuing the creature into the Arctic. This physical isolation mirrors his emotional isolation. His refusal to share his burdens with others or to accept help. The creature is even more isolated, cut off from all human contact by its appearance. Both creator and creation are profoundly lonely, and this loneliness is depicted through Gothic imagery of empty landscapes, abandoned buildings, and individuals wandering alone through hostile environments. Decay is also omnipresent in the novel, most obviously in the fact that the creature is literally assembled from decaying corpses. Victor spends months surrounded by death and corruption, working in charnel houses and graveyards, handling body parts that are rotting. This physical decay is paralleled by moral decay, as Victor's ethics deteriorate, and as the creature's initial goodness rots into violence and revenge. The Gothic style makes these abstract themes visceral and disturbing, makes readers feel the horror and disgust rather than just thinking about it intellectually. Kamda. Another Gothic element is the theme of forbidden knowledge and transgression. Gothic literature often involves characters who cross boundaries that should not be crossed, who pursue knowledge or experiences that are dangerous or taboo, and who suffer terrible consequences as a result. Victor's creation of life is the ultimate transgression, a violation of natural law and divine prerogative. He describes his work as unhallowed, acknowledging that there is something wrong and impious about what he is doing, even as he continues to do it. This theme of forbidden knowledge taps into old fears about human ambition and the dangers of trying to be godlike. It also reflects anxieties about science. In the early 19th century, when scientific advances were beginning to challenge religious explanations of the world, and when the possibility of scientific disaster was becoming imaginable, Mary Shelley was writing at a time when people were genuinely unsure about the limits of science, when galvanism and chemistry seemed to be revealing secrets about life itself, and when it was not entirely clear what would or would not be possible in the future. Our novel gave form to these anxieties and created a powerful myth about what happens when humans try to seize powers they are not meant to have. Chapter 30. The social and historical context code. To fully understand Frankenstein, it helps to know something about the time when it was written. The early 19th century was a period of enormous change and upheaval in Europe. The French Revolution had happened just a generation earlier, overturning old social orders and demonstrating that even systems that seemed permanent could be violently transformed. The Napoleonic Wars had just ended, leaving Europe exhausted and politically unstable. The Industrial Revolution was beginning to change how people lived and worked, moving populations from rural areas to cities, introducing new technologies and new forms of labor, creating new classes of workers and new forms of poverty. Science was advancing rapidly, and old certainties were being questioned. This was the world Mary Shelley grew up in. a world of change and possibility, but also of anxiety and disruption. Frankenstein reflects many of these historical concerns. The creature can be read as representing the masses, the workers and peasants who were beginning to demand rights and representation, and who seemed potentially dangerous to the established order. Victor's inability to control his creation mirrors the aristocracy's inability to control social forces they had helped set in motion. And Mary Shelley's personal background also deeply influenced the novel. Her mother, Mary Wollstonecraft, was a pioneering feminist thinker who wrote A Vindication of the Rights of Woman, arguing that women deserved education and equality. Mary Wollstonecraft died when Mary was just 11 days old from complications related to the birth, so Mary grew up without a mother, but with her mother's intellectual legacy. Her father, William Godwin, was a political philosopher who argued for anarchism and utilitarianism and against traditional institutions. Mary was raised in a household where radical ideas were normal, where she was encouraged to think for herself and to question authority. When she fell in love with Percy Shelley, a poet who shared her parents' radical politics, they faced Norborn. They were not married when they first ran away together, because Percy was already married to someone else. Mary faced scandal and social ostracism. She lost 2 babies in infancy before writing Frankenstein, experiencing the grief of creating life and watching it die. All of these experiences, the question of what creators owe their creations, would have been painfully personal to someone who had lost children. The theme of social rejection would have resonated with someone who was treated as an outcast for defying convention. The summer of 1816, when Frankenstein was conceived, was also climatically unusual and became known as the year without a summer. A massive volcanic eruption in Indonesia the previous year had thrown so much ash into the atmosphere that it affected global weather patterns. Europe experienced unusually cold and rainy conditions throughout the summer, with crop failures and food shortages. This contributed to the gloomy, oppressive atmosphere at the Villa Diodati, where Mary and her companions were staying. They were essentially trapped indoors by the relentless bad weather, which gave them time to read ghost stories and challenge each other to write their own, but also created a mood of apocalyptic gloom. The abnormal weather made the world feel unstable and dangerous, and this feeling pervades Frankenstein. The novel is full of storms and unnatural conditions. The creature is brought to life during an unnaturally gloomy November night. Victor's most important confrontations happen during storms. The final pursuit takes place in the frozen Arctic, the most inhospitable environment on Earth. Nature in the novel is often hostile or indifferent to human needs, reflecting the reality of a time when nature was demonstrably not behaving normally. And Chapter 31. The Literary Legacy. Okay, Frankenstein essentially created, or at least popularized several literary genres and concepts that are still central to fiction today. It is often considered the first true science fiction novel, the first major work of fiction to take science and technology as its central concern and to extrapolate from current scientific knowledge to imagine future possibilities. Before Frankenstein, most fantastic literature involved magic or the supernatural. But Mary Shelley's creature is created through science, through the application of natural principles that Victor has discovered. This shift from magic to science as the explanation for the possible is what makes Frankenstein science fiction rather than fantasy. The novel asked what would happen if scientists pushed their knowledge too far, what the consequences of new technologies might be. And these are still the central questions of science fiction. Every story about robots, artificial intelligence, genetic engineering, or mad scientists owe something to Frankenstein. The novel established templates and concerns that science fiction writers continue to explore. Munged. Frankenstein also established the trope of the mad scientist, the researcher who becomes so obsessed with discovery that he ignores all ethical considerations and eventually loses control of what he creates. Victor Frankenstein is the prototype for countless similar characters in later fiction. Dr. Jekyll, Dr. Moreau. Every movie scientist who builds a robot or creates a monster and then watches in horror as it goes wrong. This archetype has become so common that we sometimes forget it had to be invented. And Mary Shelley invented it. She created the template for stories about the dangers of scientific hubris, about the way brilliance and ambition can lead to disaster if not balanced by a moral consideration and human connection. The phrase Frankenstein's monster has entered common language as a metaphor for any creation that escapes its creator's control and becomes dangerous. We talk about Frankenstein projects in politics or business, meaning efforts that were supposed to solve problems but instead created bigger ones. This metaphorical use of Frankenstein shows how deeply the story has penetrated cultural consciousness. Lent. The novel also influenced the development of horror as a literary genre. While horror elements existed in Gothic literature before Frankenstein, Mary Shelley's novel showed how horror could be combined with philosophical depth and serious themes. The creature is genuinely frightening in many scenes, especially in the early descriptions when Victor first sees it alive, but it is also sympathetic. This combination of horror and pathos, of fear and pity, became a model for later horror that aspired to be more than just scary. The best horror stories often work the way Frankenstein does, using the monster or the frightening situation as a way to explore deeper human fears and moral questions. What are we afraid of? And what do those fears say about us? How do we treat things we consider other or monstrous? When does the victim become the villain? And when does the villain deserve sympathy? These questions, so central to Frankenstein, are also central to the horror genre as it developed in the 19th and 20th centuries. Bound. Chapter 32. The creature in popular culture. The creature from Frankenstein has been adapted and reimagined so many times that it has become a cultural icon, recognized even by people who have never read the novel. The novel supports all of these readings and many more because it is rich and ambiguous enough to be approached from multiple theoretical perspectives. This interpretive flexibility is part of what makes Frankenstein a literary classic, a work that each generation can read and find relevant. to their own concerns and questions. Mind, Chapter 33. Ethical questions for the modern age. The questions Frankenstein raises have become even more urgent in the century as technology advances in ways that Mary Shelley could not have imagined. The novel asks, what happens when we create intelligent beings? And this question is now relevant not just as a thought experiment, but as a practical concern with the development of artificial intelligence. As AI systems become more sophisticated and potentially approach something like consciousness or personhood, we have the same questions. If we create intelligent machines, what responsibilities do we have toward them? Do they have rights? Can we simply turn them off if they become inconvenient or dangerous? What happens if they develop goals and desires that conflict with ours? The creature in Frankenstein was intelligent and self-aware and suffered from being rejected and mistreated. If we create AI systems that are also intelligent and self-aware, do we have an obligation to treat them ethically? And what does ethical treatment even mean in that context? These questions are being seriously debated by philosophers, ethicists, and technology developers, and Frankenstein provides a narrative framework for thinking about them. Mend. The novel is also relevant to discussions of genetic engineering and biotechnology. Scientists can now edit genes, create synthetic organisms, and potentially make changes to human embryos that would be inherited by future generations. These capabilities raise obvious Frankenstein parallels. Are we playing God when we modify the genetic code of living things? What are our responsibilities toward the organisms we create or modify? What if genetic modifications have unintended consequences that we discover only after it is too late to undo them? The novel suggests that creation without careful thought about consequences is dangerous and irresponsible. Victor did not think about what life would be like for his creature or what impact it would have on the world. He created life because he could, because the achievement would be glorious, without considering what came after. Modern scientists working with genetic engineering have generally been more thoughtful, imposing restrictions on their own research and engaging with ethical questions. But the Frankenstein story remains a useful cautionary tale about the need for responsibility and foresight, and the novel also speaks to questions about parenting and what we owe to the next generation, climate change, environmental destruction, political instability, and other crises that current generations have created or worsened will primarily affect future generations who had no say in creating these problems. In a sense, we are creating a world, a future, and then abandoning it to the consequences of our actions, much like Victor created the creature and then abandoned it. The creature's speech about how it wanted to be good but was made evil by its circumstances can be read as a warning about what happens when we create conditions that make it hard for people to thrive. If we create a society or a world characterized by inequality, injustice, environmental collapse, and suffering, can we then be surprised when people become angry or desperate or violent? The novel suggests that creators, whether of individual beings or of broader social conditions, cannot wash their hands of responsibility for what they create. The consequences of our actions continue even after we would prefer to move on and forget. Send Chapter 34, The Beauty of the Language. One of the reasons Frankenstein continues to be read rather than just being studied as a historical artifact is that it is genuinely well written, with passages of beautiful and powerful language that remain affecting 2 centuries later. Mary Shelley was only 18 when she wrote much of the novel, but she already had a sophisticated command of language and an ability to create memorable images and phrases. Some of the descriptions of nature are stunning, capturing the sublime beauty and terror of the alpine landscapes. When Victor describes standing on the glacier and looking at the mountains, the language conveys both the visual majesty of the scene and the emotional response it provokes. Some of the creature's speeches are genuinely moving, articulating loneliness and longing in ways that make readers feel deep sympathy, despite knowing that the creature is a murderer. The creature's line about how it should have been Victor's Adam, but is instead his fallen angel, his monster, is both poetic and psychologically acute, capturing in a single sentence the tragedy of its existence. Blimt. The novel also uses language effectively to create atmosphere and mood. The descriptions of Victor's laboratory and his work creating the creature are deliberately vague about the actual process, which is a brilliant choice because it keeps the focus on the emotional and ethical dimensions rather than getting bogged down in pseudoscientific explanations that would not be convincing. Instead, Shelley describes Victor's feelings and the sensory experience of the work, the guttering candle, the rain pattering against the windows, his anxiety mounting as the moment of animation approaches. And this impressionistic approach is more effective than a detailed description would be because it captures what matters, which is physical. The vagueness also allows readers to fill in details with their own imaginations, which is always more frightening than anything explicitly described. The novel's language is accessible and clear, but it is also elevated enough to convey the importance of the themes and to give weight to the emotional moments. Characters speak in ways that are sometimes formal by modern standards, but the formality serves a purpose, giving their statements a kind of dignity and seriousness. The Mary Shelley also uses the frame narrative structure very effectively. The story begins with Robert Walton's letters to his sister, which establishes a realistic and ordinary perspective before we plunge into the strange and tragic story of Victor Frankenstein. The letters create a sense of distance and safety, reminding us that we are reading something that has already happened, that Walton survived to write about it. But then as Victor begins to tell his story, we are drawn deeper into his perspective, and frem is sympathico. When the creature tells its own story, we go even deeper. 3 levels of narrative, removed from the present moment of Walton on his ship. This layering of perspectives creates a sense of looking through multiple lenses, of stories within stories, and it allows Shelley to show the same events from different viewpoints, letting readers form their own judgments about who is right and who is responsible. The return to Walton's perspective at the end, when we finally see the creature directly, rather than just hearing about it through Victor's biased account, provides a kind of objective confirmation that the creature is real, and that everything Victor said was true, at least in the basic facts, if not in the interpretation. Kenck, chapter 35, the feminist dimensions. Modern critics have increasingly recognized Frankenstein as a work with important feminist dimensions. Though Mary Shelley was not writing with an explicitly feminist agenda, the novel was written by a teenage girl who was the daughter of the most prominent feminist thinker of her time, and it reflects concerns about gender, creation, and power that are deeply relevant to feminist analysis. One of the most significant aspects is that the creation of the creature is an entirely male endeavor, an act of creation that bypasses women completely. Victor creates life without a mother, without a woman's involvement at all. This can be read as a kind of masculine fantasy of not needing women, of making women's reproductive role obsolete. But the novel shows that this fantasy leads to disaster. Victor's creature is abandoned and monstrously unhappy, precisely because it lacks the maternal care and nurturing that would have been provided by a mother. The novel suggests that creation without the feminine principle, creation as a purely intellectual and masculine exercise. This is not to say that Shelley was arguing women are naturally nurturing, or that only women can provide care, but the novel does show the consequences of excluding feminine perspectives and values from the creative process. The female characters in Frankenstein are often passive and victimized, which has led some critics to argue that the novel reflects the limited roles available to women in the early 19th century. Caroline Frankenstein is defined primarily by her role as a devoted wife and mother, and she dies relatively young, Elizabeth, but she has little agency in the story and ultimately exists primarily as Victor's intended bride and as a target for the creature's revenge. Justine is innocent and powerless, falsely accused and executed without being able to defend herself effectively. All of these women are destroyed by the conflict between Victor and the creature. Collateral damage in a masculine drama, but while Shelley depicts these women as victims, the novel can also be read as critiquing the system that makes them victims. The tragedy that befalls the female characters is presented as part of the larger tragedy caused by Victor's irresponsible ambition and by a society that does not give women power or voice. Mary Shelley herself was a woman who refused to be passive or victimized, who ran away with a married man, who wrote a novel that challenged her society's values. So it makes sense that her novel would depict feminine passivity as a problem rather than celebrating it as an ideal. The creature's demand for a female companion also raises interesting questions about gender. The creature wants a mate who will be exactly like him, a female version of himself who will be forced to accept him because she will have no other options. This is not a romantic vision of love between equals, but rather a plan to create a being who will be compelled by circumstances to provide companionship. Victor recognizes this when he worries about what the female creature might want, and whether she will accept the role the male creature has imagined for her. His decision to destroy the female creature before completing her, while morally problematic in many ways, shows an awareness that she would be a person with her own will and desires, not simply a support system for the male creature. Some critics have argued that the female creature's destruction represents the destruction of female power or female sexuality, that Victor cannot tolerate the idea of a powerful female being who might not be controllable. The novel does not, but it raises them in ways that make Frankenstein relevant to feminist discussions about autonomy, creation, and the relationships between men and women. Lambed conclusion, the eternal resonance of a dark dream. As we reach the end of this long journey through Frankenstein and its meanings, it is worth reflecting on why this story has lasted so long and meant so much to so many people. Mary Shelley created something on that stormy summer night that transcended her own time and place, something that speaks to fundamental human concerns and fears. The story is about creation and responsibility, about what we owe to the things we bring into the world. It is about loneliness and the desperate human need for connection and acceptance. It is about the consequences of unchecked ambition and the dangers of pursuing knowledge without wisdom. It is about what makes something human and what makes something monstrous, and it suggests that the answer to that question is more complicated than we might wish. The genius of Frankenstein is that it refuses to provide easy answers or simple moral lessons. Both Victor and the creature are victims and villains, both sympathetic and culpable, both tragic and terrible. The novel asks us to hold contradictory truths in our minds simultaneously, that the creature's murders are unforgivable, but that the creature's suffering is real and unjust, that Victor's creation of life is an astounding achievement, but that his abandonment of what he created is an unforgivable crime. The Gothic atmosphere of the novel, the dark laboratories and storm-racked landscapes, the midnight confrontations and Arctic pursuits, all serve to make the philosophical questions feel urgent and visceral rather than abstract. We feel Victor's guilt and the creature's loneliness. We understand through our emotions as well as our intellects why this story matters. The creature's eloquent speeches about suffering and isolation, Victor's anguished recognition of his responsibility too late to prevent tragedy, Walton's witnessing of the aftermath, and his struggle to understand what he has seen, all of these elements combine to create something that operates on multiple levels simultaneously. Frankenstein is a thrilling story, a philosophical meditation, a social commentary, a character study, and a warning, all woven together in a narrative that has proven endlessly adaptable and relevant. Each generation finds new meanings in the story because the questions it asks are permanent questions as long as humans create things, as long as science advances, as long as we struggle with responsibility and ethics and the treatment of those we consider different or other. Frankenstein, Mary Shelley could not have known that her dark dream would become one of the most famous and influential stories ever told. She could not have predicted that 200 years later, people would still be reading her novel, still debating what it means, still being moved by the tragic tale of Victor Frankenstein and his creature. She wrote it when she was barely more than a child herself, processing her own grief and fears and questions through the act of creation. In doing so, she created a story that has become part of our shared cultural inheritance, a myth as powerful as any ancient legend, a cautionary tale that speaks across centuries. The name Frankenstein has become synonymous with the dangers of playing God, with the consequences of irresponsible creation, with the tragedy that results when creators abandon what they make. But the story is also, at its heart, profoundly human. It is about a being who wanted only to be accepted and loved, who tried to be good but was made evil by cruelty and rejection, and about a man who achieved his greatest ambition only to discover that it brought him nothing but misery. These are timeless human tragedies, and they will remain relevant as long as people continue to dream, to create, to make mistakes, and to suffer the consequences. So as you drift towards sleep, let the story of Frankenstein settle into your mind like snow falling on the frozen Arctic wastes where Victor and the creature had their final confrontation. Let the Gothic darkness wrap around you comfortably, the cozy terror of a story told by firelight, safe in the knowledge that this is only a tale, even as it speaks to truths that are very real. The creature still wanders somewhere in our collective imagination, asking to be seen and understood rather than feared and rejected. Victor still serves as a warning about the need for responsibility and forethought, about the importance of caring for what we create, and Mary Shelley's achievement still stands, a reminder that even a young person with something to say can change the world and create something that will outlive them by centuries, that will continue to be read and studied and loved long after their own story has ended. Sleep well, and may your dreams be full of Gothic shadows and moral questions, of lightning animating the dead and creatures learning to speak, of mountains and ice and the consequences that chase us, no matter how far we run.